Loyal back again. I'm gonna hit y'all with something. Hey, this video right here is gonna be a trailer for a video that it's a video series I'm gonna start called The Rat Kings. It's probably gonna be 2 or 3 episodes, but it's gonna talk about the origin of how can I say this? It's going to be talking about the origin of rats and biological weapons. And it's going to talk about the kings. I'm going to give you guys a quick little review of it. Did you know that rats weren't all over the world? Just like you got animals in certain locations and certain regions of the world, same thing occurred with rats. Rats weren't all over the world. That's why when they got to certain locations, they became invasive. The reason why rats are all over the world today is because they were used as biological weapons. They were used as living weapons to take out large, nations or peoples. And see, it all starts back when the city of York was established. And a lot of people don't know this because the York before New York was what they call it Old York, but in actuality it was just called York. And York was a city filled with people that loved the fucking war. Just a city of warriors, right? And they didn't have a government. They didn't have no infrastructure. And then other cities and other towns, little regions would come to York and solicit business from these people to use them to take on their enemies. So if a king of a region had a problem with another king, instead of sending his men out to fight and die, fighting this person, they would go to York and pay for a family of assassins or warriors to go and fight for them. And this became really popular back in the day. I mean, these people were unmatched in their fighting abilities. And they got rich doing it. Check out the families that lived in York. The House of York, right? Check these people out. These people became kings. So all these other kingdoms that used them were like, hey, man, these guys cannot be beat. But everybody been beat by them. And they were like, well, we can't just allow these people, to be used like this no more, because eventually they're going to get wise to it. And they're going to say, instead of working for these little kingdoms, why don't we just take them over? And they did that at one point. The House of York had a couple kings and shit, right? King Phillips and all of them and shit. So all of the other kingdoms around York said that we can't allow them to exist, because if they decide to turn it on all of us, then they would take over everything. And they started to do it slowly until all of the kingdoms developed a strategy. See, over in England, rats lived because, all they did was hop from island to island. But the population was low because there was a lot of invasive species. But the rats, at one point, were like, they were like the garbage disposals of these cities. So they would take their trash and everything, and they would take them to these places that they call landfills. This is why we get our ideas about landfills. And they would take their trash and dump it there and pour what we would call a gravy over them. But it was just flavoring. You know what I'm saying? And the rats would come and eat all the trash. It didn't matter what it was. If it was like scrap metal, plastic, wood, paper, cloth, fur, bones, the rats would come and eat it if they put that stuff over it. Well, at one time, the rats became so populated in these areas where they were dumping their trash and feeding the rats garbage, right? That they decided that they couldn't do that no more. They had to kill the rats. But before they did, they wanted to utilize these rats to take out their enemies. So each nation or each kingdom would take a large number of rats, take it back to their kingdom, train them up, starve them, make them aggressive, and then they would use these rats to attack the Yorks. And these people in the Yorks didn't know no better, because everybody knew of rats over there, but they didn't realize that these kingdoms were releasing waves of rats, vicious, hungry rats, onto their population. Before they knew it, York was infested with these crazy-ass rats that would attack people in the streets, would invade people's homes at night and kill the occupants. So the people of York were like, hey, we can't survive if we are fighting with people and we're fighting with these animals. So they devised ways to kill the rats, right? But it never got off the ground over there in York. Survivors of York fled to the New World, America, and started a new colony called New York. New York went through the same thing. At the time when these people moved into New York, into the area that they call New York, there were no rats there. But see, these people that came brought the rats with them because they saw how these rats were used against them, and they decided that they were going to create their own form of these rats, a domesticated version of them. And by doing that, they created the rat population in New York, which eventually became the rat, population of the East Coast of America and the mouse problem of America. Rodents didn't survive all over the world. For one, they can't survive in climates that are too dry and too cold. They need warmth, they need vegetation and water. So they were introduced to the Americas as domesticated animals. And they were using them just like they started using the pigs. They started using them to dump their trash and let the rats eat it. And the rats would eat everything. I mean everything. Paper, metal, plastic. They would eat all of that shit. Well, the Yorks that came to New York, or that created New York, devised the same scheme that all of those people over there in England devised against them. Utilized these rats to take out their enemies. Now, I know that sounds weird, but in actuality, the rats were the cause of the Black Plague over there in Europe. That was one of the first places that they hit. Right? Well, in order to deter the rats from doing the same thing here in America, they started creating the traps. The first traps created were in America, in New York City, to fight against the overwhelming effects of this biological warfare that they did to these people. Not only did they let the rats go on these people and the rats were attacking people, they also injected the rats with poisons and bacteria. So when these rats attacked people, they would be affected by the poisons and the bacteria. Believe it or not, a rat that's injected with poison and doesn't die becomes a poisonous rat, almost like a snake with venom. And hence how we started getting diseases that transferred from animals to human, like rabies, distemper, and freaking these different types of venereal diseases. These diseases were introduced to the populace by the animals. So when we created the rat trap in New York back in the 1800s, the first rat traps, right? That was to combat the biological warfare that these Yorks, that the House of York survivors brought over here to America. And they did this because they knew exactly what happened over in Old York in England to them when they were at their peak, at their height of success as a nation. They were hired to kill all other people for pay. And then after they took out all the enemies of their employers turned on them and decided that they were going to use a subtle way of attacking these people from the inside out. And they used rats to do it. Now, the Rat King whole title and shit is based off of the House of York. You know, the kings that came from the House of York. And the way that they became kings at that age was working for people as like hired guns or like hired assassins. And they worked for even the enemies of the people that hired them. And that's why they were turned on. You know, in this story, they tried to tell this story in a few of the shows that they had, like the Tudors. But they ain't gonna tell it the way it's supposed to be told because they ain't gonna let people know that the way that they got their whole, the way that their whole society was shut down is by using rats to do it. And see, motherfuckers don't realize that these rats were the start of what we have today of domesticated animals. Because the people that came from Old York, that came from and made New York, domesticated the rats that they brought from over in England here in America. All those rats that's in New York right now are all domesticated rats. Motherfuckers don't even realize that. They living amongst millions of pet rats. And they don't even know how these rats got there. New York is an island that's attached by bridges. Rats don't do too well on crossing bridges. You know, when I was in the military, I watched them set up these rat deterrents. The entrances of the bridge or of the bridges were graded. The rats don't like grades that much, so that deterred some rats. But the other ones that tried to cross on the lines and on the structures were deterred with these flaps. And I'm gonna show these flaps and shit in my video. I'm gonna show a lot of pictures and everything. I'm gonna show you guys where this story originated from, called the Rat Kings, because these people were actually assassins before they were breeders. And this is how we got most of the domesticated animals we have today, like cows, goats, sheep, dogs, cats. They all came from rats. And people don't even realize this shit. That New York has the largest population of domesticated animals by land mass. New York has has damn near billions of domesticated rats living there. Back in the day in Old York, you couldn't walk down the street at night, with a weapon, even with a fire, and the rats would attack you in Old York. And see, these people, they had to defend against that. So they would capture the rats to find out what was wrong with them. And most of them were diseased. Most of them were hungry and starving. So they discovered how they can do that. Most of the diseases that the rats could have would be cured with just water. And this is something that we don't understand. When you poison a rat with rat poison, you're actually giving them the antidote to the disease that they have. Especially like rabies. Rabies, the cure for rabies is actually water. You know what I'm saying? Water flushes the rabies virus out of its host. Rabies don't like water. And if you give the host, the person that has rabies or the animal that has rabies, water, if you force them to drink water, over time they'll eventually pass the rabies out of their system. That's why when an animal gets rabies, they are definitely afraid of water, because that's the parasite inside of them getting them to stop, taking in fluids. So the kings of York's, the House of York, devised a plan. They're going to set up their new kingdom in the new world, and anybody that attacks them will be taken on by these animals that wiped them out back in the day, because at one time they were the most powerful nation over in England. The city of York, or the region of York, housed the most warriors per land than any nation over in England. So when they were attacked, they were attacked behind the scenes. If they were attacked straight up, they would have killed anybody attacking them. That's why all the kingdoms around York decided to attack them at the same time, covertly, by using biological weapons. And they were successful at it. But they didn't realize that these warriors would one day become some of the most experienced breeders in the world. From that region, we get domestication of animals like the German Shepherd, the Belgian Malinois. These are dogs that were bred for specific reasons. And these dogs were bred by utilizing rats. That's how they were bred. Combination of rodent and marsupial to create a dog. So when you hear people sit up here and talk about New York and their rat population, they don't even realize that New York was actually the place of domestication of animals, where we first started experimenting with mixing breeds of rodents in order to get a desired result. And that's what we got today. Today we have an animal in the rats that roam in New York today are so smart that they can coexist amongst humans and still, live a long life. And the reason why they can't get rid of the rats in New York is because maybe today they're still running that secret program. They're still running that program, that biological weapons program, by utilizing the rats. The rats wiped out large populations of people, not only because they were attacking them, the rats were attacking people and killing them, but they were also infecting people with diseases that weren't normally what people would catch. The average person that got bit by a snake, if he got a shot with antivenom, would survive. But when a rat is infected, is injected with snake venom, right? It doesn't die like we think it does. When a snake bites a rat, the poison doesn't kill a rat like it will kill a human. See, because rats are small, they got one of the fastest metabolisms in nature. So metabolizing a venom of a snake, even a poisonous snake, a real poisonous snake, a rat could survive if he had time. It will put the rat in a coma, paralyzing them. But eventually the effects will wear off. Unlike humans, we're larger animals with slower metabolisms. When we get bit by a snake, our body doesn't process the venom out as quickly as it needs to. So what the venom does, it makes our blood into jelly. And when we try to pump that jelly around our body, it stops the heart, because the heart can't pump clots. So that's why we die, and rats don't die when they get bit by cobras. If a cobra bit a rat and didn't eat it, later on that week, or I'm gonna say a couple days, the rat will come back to life. It would start moving again and go about its business. Because rats have the adaptable ability to process poisons. And these people knew this because all they fed the rats in York were trash. Around that area, man, they would take like a pot of gravy and they would take all their trash to the landfill, dump it there, and pour that gravy over the trash. The rats would come out by the thousands. And by the end of that day, all of that trash was gone. The rats ate it all. The rats were like little garbage disposals. They ate all the trash. Well, over time, the numbers of these rats multiplied by the millions. And they didn't have enough food to feed them. So the rats became feral. And the feral rats would attack people dumping the trash. So they decided that they were going to get rid of the rats. And this is how some of the discoveries of poisons, right, to kill rats were actually created. The decom, or the rat poison that we use in America that dehydrates the rats, was actually a cure for rabies at one time. It didn't kill the rats. It just made them overly thirsty, right? Well, you give that to an animal that has rabies, and that counters the effects of the rabies on the animal. Because the animal with rabies is definitely afraid of water. But if you give them something that makes them crave water, uncontrollably, then they'll drink the water and eventually heal themselves from the rabies, because rabies can't live in a what they call a alkaline or caustic environment. That's why animals with rabies, I'm gonna repeat it again, animals with rabies are afraid of water. It's because the rabies can't survive in water. And that's why the poisons that we used were specifically created to make an animal excessively dehydrated. And I'm going to show you guys all of this. But this is like my trailer to it. I'm just giving you guys a heads up because this is going to be a video. It's not going to be a live stream. Because I'm learning now that the live streams are garbage. YouTube don't like live streams that much because they can't control what you say. Everything occurs at the time that you say it. So what they do is they make my live streams private, and I have to go back and open them up and make them public. That's why a lot of my live streams only got, double digits on them. Because if I don't go back and turn them public again from private, then YouTube hides my shit. It automatically does that. I don't know why it does that. I should ask other people to see if they say the same thing. But I think this is going to be an interesting, little 3-episode story, because that would open up people's mind and let them see that a lot of the things that we use today were created for a reason, and they should look at their pets as if they were, at one time utilized to, harm them. In order to get a dog, you have to create some type of breed that was similar to the rat. And they taught us all these years that the dog was the cousin of the wolf. But you can't domesticate a wolf. I don't care if you do raise it from a cub or a pup. You can't domesticate it, because wolves have instincts. Every animal has instincts. That's why we know certain things about our own, race or breed that other animals don't. Cows just automatically know where they get their milk from when they come out of the womb. The calf does. Same thing with horses. And it ain't like they got a sign saying, come here, come here. They say that they locate these areas by smell, but I think that's a lie too. I think they learn this because while we're in the room, we're actually inside of the thing that's going to feed us. So we learn the anatomy to some extent of what that animal is. When a baby comes out, they automatically want to suckle It's because of instinct, not because they were taught to do that. So, just looking at this stuff, man, and learning it opens your mind up so you can see things a little bit different. And a lot of people right now wouldn't be sick if it wasn't for their pets. A lot of women wouldn't have cancers, if it wasn't for their pets. Same thing with men. They wouldn't have these cancers if it wasn't for their pets. A lot of these people wouldn't have these diseases that involve the skin and all of that shit if it wasn't for pets. So this is just a little interlude into the story I'm going to talk about. And the title of it is going to be called The Rat Kings. And it's going to talk about Old York, New York, biological weapons, rats, and the first forms of domestication. I know it's going to be some dry information. People don't really like stuff like this. Everybody's into the drama. Well, this is food for thought. So if you hungry, tap in, man. Watch these videos. Like and share them. I'm gonna stop doing the live streams and start making more videos because a lot of people don't know these stories. And it feels weird when I start telling these stories to people and they be like, where'd you get this from? These stories are out there. They're actually out there. How are you gonna sit up here and tell me that, these stories are made up, but you believe in oral tradition? These stories were part of oral tradition. And you can find proof of them on the internet today. You can find proof of the Yorks, the House of Yorks, but you won't find out some of the stuff because a lot of these people are still around today, and they running the shit. They running shit. They don't want you to find out that their family were wiped out by rats. Who wants people to know that large numbers of their family was wiped out by rodents? Nobody. Nobody wants to know. Nobody wants everybody to know that they were once used to assassinate all kind of people and shit. The Yorks were utilized by every kingdom to fight the wars that the kingdom didn't want to fight. And every kingdom used them, even against the people that used to hire them. So the Yorks had an advantage that no other, kingdom had. They had the advantage of knowing every kingdom's weakness. They fought everybody and destroyed them one by one. And that's why they were looked at as a threat. Because people were like, they beat every nation in this region. If they ever decided to overthrow every nation, they could because they know all of our weaknesses. And that's why they were targeted. So I think it's a good story. I'm going to tell it. I hope you guys like it. And like, share, subscribe. And thank you guys for listening, man. Yeah, I'm out.